It was the middle of summer, and being an avid backpacker and camper, I'd heard from one of my buddies about old fire lookouts that you could rent. Apparently, they were retired lookout stations, usually in the middle of nowhere, miles and miles into the forest. The one I chose was pretty much the most isolated one I could find. It was easier to rent, having available slots basically through the whole summer, and I liked hiking anyway. There was only a single picture I could find of it though, and it was super old and blurry, so really I had no clue what to expect of the lookout tower. I knew it was built in the 1950s, so it'd be old, but as far as how much restoration was done to it, I was going in blind. I brought my usual backpacking gear and started the hike at 9 a.m. There wasn't much out there as far as views go, not for the first few hours. It was just very dense, harsh forest terrain. The trail wasn't even much of a trail anymore, just a very rough path. After 5 hours though, I finally got a glimpse of the lookout tower. It was far in the distance still, sitting atop a mountain. It looked very small and wasn't one that was high up on stilts. It looked more like a cabin than anything, maybe raised up 10 to 15 feet. There was another hour of trekking before I actually got there. The hike was definitely worth it just for the view alone. Felt like I could see the whole world from there. The fire lookout was in rough shape, however, very noticeably old, with some patchwork here and there done to certain parts. It had a wraparound staircase of 20 or so steps leading up to the walkway that went around the whole lookout, and the inside was entirely empty. It wasn't glamorous, but honestly, it could have been worse, and to have this view, I'd take it any day. With a few hours of sunlight left, I tossed my bag down, made some food, and relaxed on the outer ledge. It was real quiet up there, just the sound of birds and wind. I was pretty beat from the hike up, so after the sun fell past the horizon, I threw my sleeping stuff on the wooden floorboards and laid down. It was only around 8, so even though I was exhausted, I couldn't quite fall asleep as fast as I wanted. I think 30 to 40 minutes went by. Then I thought I heard something outside the lookout tower. Before I could even get up and look, there were clear footsteps coming up the stairs. I hurried out of my sleeping bag and up to the door, which notably had no locks on it. A few seconds later, a man came around the corner. He was older, say late 40s, and had longish blonde hair. Somehow, he wasn't startled when he saw me, almost like he knew I was already up here. "Great place to stay a few nights, isn't it?" he said, grinning and walking up closer to me. I agreed, still a little nervous, and mentioned I booked it for the next 3 nights. I was already a little put off though, because I knew there was nothing else around here, so him being here while I was also here was really strange. I asked if he was camping around here. "Actually, I was hoping to be staying here tonight," he said, again with a grin. I wasn't sure how to respond to that, but I ended up just saying sorry. "Well, it looks like you've got enough room in there. I mean, it's just you here, right?" After hesitating for a second, I lied, saying a friend of mine was just a few minutes out, and that unfortunately we couldn't let him stay here with us. He looked at me, grin fading from his face, and didn't say anything for a moment, then nodded and started to leave. It wasn't until he turned around to head back down the stairs that I noticed he didn't have a backpack, no gear at all. Surely he had to have left his pack somewhere nearby. Couldn't see why anyone would be this far isolated without any camping gear, even if they were planning on using the fire lookout as a shelter. I got some uneasy feelings about that man, so I stayed up a bit longer and just stared at the forest below the lookouts. I did end up getting really sleepy though, and and got back in my sleeping bag and passed out. I woke up in the morning, feeling better and spending the first hour making coffee and enjoying the view. When I headed down from the lookout, though, there was a note attached to the wooden railing at the bottom. It was just a piece of paper with the word "sorry" written on it, with a smiley face next to it. I assumed it had to be from the guy, but if he put this here, then he must have come back sometime in the middle of the night while I was sleeping. I immediately felt really unsettled just thinking about it. The fact he even left a note was just weird. Despite the strange occurrence, I decided to go for a walk. Maybe it was to also scan the area for any signs of the man still being around, because clearly he didn't leave when he should have. I wandered around the forest, down the hill from the fire lookout. There wasn't much to see though. It was all the same dense forest that I'd hiked up through the previous day, and I didn't notice any campsites or things left behind. I went back to the lookout and enjoyed the peace and quiet for the rest of the day. I stayed up much later than I did the night before. I had this small battery-powered lantern that I hung up on the wall so I could see a little better, and I just sort of existed. I thought about whatever and stared out at the darkness beyond the lookout, only slightly being able to make out the outline of the mountains. I want to say I didn't start getting ready for bed until nearly midnight. Could have even been 1 a.m. I set up my stuff, then grabbed my lantern and headed down the steps to the forest to take a leak real quick before bed. I walked up just to the edge of the tree line, but as I got there, I saw something move in front of me. Just a glimpse of something shift out of the dim light from my lantern. I froze for a second, then held it up further forward, although it didn't help much.
Someone there.
The silence that followed my voice made things even more eerie. I basically ran back to the lookout. It didn't feel much safer in there, though. Windows covered every inch of the walls, and like I mentioned before, the door didn't even have a lock on it. Part of me really wanted to leave, but heading out now while it was pitch black out, and with the trail being nearly non-existent, would probably be worse than just staying put. I kept the lantern hung up on the wall and looked out the windows at the forest below. It was really eerie knowing that with the light, if someone was out there, they could probably clearly see me in the window. Meanwhile, all I saw was darkness. I could see the bottom of the stairs though, so that's what I was focusing on, making sure nobody tried to come up. The longer I stayed there watching, the more this sense of unease started to fill my body. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I decided to pack up my stuff. At least then I could make a run for it if I had to. As I stuffed my backpack, I would stop every 30 seconds and go back up to the window to look out at the stairs, then continue packing, repeating this over and over until I finally got everything in my bag and ready to go. I set it up against the wall, then went back to the window. There was a man at the bottom of the stairs. He was standing right at the first step, staring at it, like he was just waiting there. I could only see part of him through all the railings, but I was sure it was the same man from yesterday. He had no backpack on and looked about the same height. I was beyond terrified. Why was he back? And why was he just standing there motionless at the bottom of the steps? What if he decided to come up again? Everything was making my mind race. I must have been at the window watching him for 2 whole minutes before the man finally moved. He took a couple steps back, pausing for a moment, then walked off. The way he went, though, was blocked off for me by the walkway, so I lost sight of him. And if he did keep walking in that direction toward the forest, it was too dark for me to tell. In the moment, I felt sure the man was stalking me, or at least keeping watch of me, and creeping up too close for comfort, especially in the middle of the night. It could have just been my gut telling me something, but I felt like if I stayed any longer, something really bad would happen. I waited a few minutes, then I grabbed my bag and quietly walked down the steps and to the surface below the lookout tower. I can't even describe how unnerved I was, walking away from the tower and into the dark forest, knowing there was a chance the guy was still watching me, and possibly following me into the trees. For that very reason, I kept my pocket knife open and in my hand the entire time. I walked for about 15 minutes, which was when the trail started to get a lot less defined, so I was forced to pull out my lantern. I hoped I was far enough that the man didn't follow and wouldn't be able to see the lights. The next 5 hours were exhaustingly unsettling. By then, the sun had come up though, and I was able to finish the hike and leave the forest. I think it's hard to fully put into perspective how horrifying those nights were. Something in me knew there was something bad about that man and his intentions. One thing I keep thinking back on is that I had told the man I booked the tower for 3 nights, which leaves no reason for him to have come back multiple times to check if I was there. It also means he likely thought I'd be there for the 3rd night. So had I not left early and actually stayed for the 3rd night, things might have taken a much more disturbing turn.